The morning started like every other for Olivia Hart, coffee brewing, soft music playing, and the smell of rain touching the windows of her Seattle home. She loved mornings like this, calm and ordinary. Her husband Ethan sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone, half listening as she talked about plans for his upcoming birthday. He smiled, distracted but charming, the way he always was. Olivia didn't notice it then, but something about his smile had changed. It was lighter, almost careless. She had spent the past week planning a surprise dinner for him. Balloons, old friends, a cake from his favorite bakery. It was supposed to be a moment to celebrate love and years of togetherness. Olivia believed they were strong, the kind of couple people looked up to. They had built their marriage on shared dreams, long drives by the coast, quiet evenings watching the city lights, endless talks about their future. But sometimes what looks solid on the outside is already cracking within. It happened so fast, a small, ordinary moment that changed everything. Olivia was setting the table when Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter. He was upstairs getting ready for work. She didn't mean to look, but the screen lit up with a message from Claire, one of their closest friends. Someone who had been at their wedding, someone who had shared dinners and laughter in this very kitchen. The message read, "I missed last night already." Those 5 words stole the air from her lungs. For a moment, she froze. Her mind refused to believe what her eyes saw. Then she read it again, slower. This time, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. The letters looked harmless, yet they carried the weight of a world collapsing. Olivia felt her knees weaken. She placed the phone down exactly as she found it, almost afraid it might burn her fingers. When Ethan came downstairs, adjusting his tie and humming softly, she looked at him and smiled. A practiced, quiet smile that hid the storm rising inside her. He kissed her cheek before leaving, completely unaware that everything had changed. The door closed behind him and the silence of the house grew heavy. Olivia sat there for a long time, staring at the clock. Her heart wasn't just breaking. It was trying to make sense of why. She replayed every recent moment, the late nights at work, the sudden mood swings, the excuses about projects and deadlines. It all made sense now, but the truth still felt unreal. How could the man she loved, the one she trusted above all, betray her with someone they both knew? The rain outside grew stronger. She watched the water slide down the glass, wondering when her life had become something she couldn't recognize. For the first time, she didn't cry. There were no screams, no shattered plates, just a quiet ache spreading through her chest. She felt like a stranger in her own home. That night, she cooked dinner like she always did. Roasted vegetables, salmon, and a bottle of white wine. When Ethan came home, he looked tired. She asked about his day. He told her stories about work, laughed about his coworkers, and she nodded, pretending to listen. But her eyes studied him differently now. Every word, every gesture, every smile, it all seemed rehearsed, fake. Empty. She thought about confronting him right then. She wanted to throw the truth in his face, to ask him how long and why her. But instead, she stayed silent. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Olivia knew that if she wanted to understand the truth, she had to watch, listen, and wait. She wanted to see who he really was when he thought she wasn't looking. Later that night, when Ethan fell asleep beside her, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. The weight of betrayal pressed on her chest like a stone. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But then a quiet thought crept into her mind, a voice she hadn't heard in a long time. It said, "Don't let this destroy you. Let it rebuild you." She turned her head toward Ethan. He looked peaceful, almost innocent in sleep. The man who once made her feel safe now felt like a stranger lying beside her. Her heart twisted painfully, but she didn't look away. Instead, she whispered in her mind, "If you can watch me break, Ethan, one day you'll have to watch me rise." The next morning, she got up early. She made breakfast, ironed his shirt, and acted as if nothing was wrong. Ethan kissed her forehead and left for work, like usual. When the door closed, Olivia took a deep breath and finally let herself cry. Not loud, not wild, but soft tears that carried years of love, trust, and disappointment. She walked through their house slowly, noticing everything she had ignored before, the photos on the walls, their wedding picture, the note he once wrote her on their anniversary that said, "You are my forever." She touched it with shaking fingers, feeling how fragile forever could be. By afternoon, she opened her laptop and searched for art classes in the city. It had been years since she painted. Art was her escape long before marriage, her way of expressing what words couldn't, but she had left it behind for Ethan, for a stable life, for a routine. Now she needed it again, not as a hobby, but as healing. That night, she didn't wait up for him. She didn't check his phone again. She just sat by the window, sketching quietly, letting her pain turn into color, into form. Every stroke of her pencil was a piece of her broken heart learning to move again. When Ethan came home and saw her drawing, he smiled. "You're painting again?" he asked casually. Olivia nodded without looking up. "Yes, it feels good." He kissed her shoulder lightly. "I'm glad," he said. She wanted to ask him if he missed Claire, but instead she just smiled faintly. "Me too." He walked away, unaware that his wife, the woman who had always stood beside him, had just begun to build a world without him in it, for the first time in weeks. Olivia slept peacefully. Not because everything was fine, but because she had made a quiet decision. She wouldn't confront him yet. She wouldn't beg or fight. She would simply rise one quiet, determined step at a time, somewhere deep inside. She knew this was the start of something new, not revenge, but transformation. He had broken her trust, but he wouldn't break her spirit. And as the rain continued to fall softly outside, Olivia Hart promised herself one thing. "He watched me break once, but someday soon he'll have to watch me win." Weeks passed after Olivia discovered Ethan's secret, but the truth stayed locked inside her. She moved through her days like a ghost in her own life, quiet, calm, polite. To anyone watching, she seemed the same loving wife, but inside, everything had changed. Her heart wasn't soft anymore. It had turned into something stronger, colder, clearer. She no longer tried to please Ethan or wait for his attention. She stopped checking his messages, stopped worrying when he stayed late. Instead, she turned inward, focusing on herself, something she hadn't done in years. Each morning, she woke up before him, made coffee, and watched the sunrise alone. The silence that used to hurt now felt like peace. She started spending her evenings sketching again, her fingers slowly remembering the language of art. What began as therapy soon became a passion. Her sadness turned into color, her loneliness into creation. Every sketch she made carried a piece of her confusion, her anger, her strength. One afternoon, she decided to take a step further. She signed up for a community art class in downtown Seattle. She told Ethan it was just something to pass time, but it was more than that. It was the first decision she made purely for herself in years. When she walked into that studio filled with the smell of paint and fresh canvases, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. That's where she met Ryan Parker. He was the gallery owner who often visited the classes to discover new artists. Ryan was calm, observant, and carried a kind of quiet confidence that made people feel seen. He wasn't charming in a flashy way like Ethan used to be. His kindness was steady and real. He noticed Olivia's work immediately: soft lines, deep emotion, controlled chaos. He said her art looked honest. And that word stayed with her for days. Ryan began guiding her gently, giving advice, introducing her to other artists, and helping her believe in her own talent. Their friendship grew naturally. No rush, no pressure, just two people who understood pain in different ways. Olivia never told him about Ethan, but he seemed to sense that she was healing from something heavy. Sometimes, when she painted late in the studio, Ryan would stay behind, making her laugh about simple things: coffee disasters, street art gone wrong, his old stories from New York. Those small moments filled the quiet spaces in her heart. Back at home, Ethan started noticing changes. Olivia wasn't waiting for him anymore. She didn't call to check where he was, didn't ask about his day, didn't seek his approval. She dressed differently too, not for anyone else, but for herself. She wore colors again, her hair loose, her eyes brighter. The woman who once waited for love was now too busy rediscovering it within herself. One evening, Ethan came home early and found Olivia painting in the living room. Sunlight fell across her face, and for a second, he saw her like he hadn't in years, alive, confident, beautiful. He asked her to show him what she was working on. She turned the canvas toward him. It was a portrait of a woman standing in the rain, her face calm but her eyes fierce, her reflection cracked beneath her feet. Ethan stared at it for a moment and said quietly, "She looks strong." Olivia smiled. "She had to be," she said, then went back to painting. Ethan didn't know what to make of this new version of her. He thought maybe she was just finding a hobby. He didn't realize that she was finding herself. Soon, Olivia's art caught attention beyond the classroom. Ryan offered to display her work in a small exhibition at his gallery. She hesitated at first, doubt creeping in, but Ryan encouraged her. "People need to see what you've created," he told her. "It's raw. It's real. Don't hide from it." The night of the exhibition arrived. Olivia wore a simple black dress, elegant and understated. As people admired her paintings, she stood there smiling, nervous but proud. Each canvas told a story of heartbreak, loss, and quiet strength. Visitors asked questions, praised her work, and took photos. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as someone's wife, but as herself. Ethan came too, out of curiosity. When he entered the gallery and saw her surrounded by people, laughing and confident, something inside him shifted. He realized she was no longer the woman waiting at home, waiting for his love. She had built a world that didn't include him. When he watched Ryan talking to her, their easy smiles, the way she looked comfortable around him, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt before. Fear of losing her for real. After the event, he tried to be more attentive. He brought flowers, asked her about her day, complimented her paintings. But his sudden affection felt forced, and Olivia sensed it. She appreciated the gestures, but they no longer reached her heart. The part of her that once belonged to him was gone at night. Ethan watched her sleep and realized she had learned how to live without him. And that scared him more than her anger ever could. He thought back to the woman who had planned his birthday, who used to wait for him at the window, and now she was beyond his reach. Meanwhile, Olivia continued to grow. Ryan introduced her to other artists and mentors, and she began working on a new series, one about rebirth and second chances. Her hands moved faster, her colors brighter, her emotions sharper. She was changing not just as an artist, but as a woman. She no longer cried over the past. Instead, she turned it into something beautiful. Her pain had become purpose. Weeks later, Ryan offered her a position at the gallery as an assistant curator. It was a big step, one that meant stability and independence. Olivia accepted. She wanted a new life, one that didn't revolve around betrayal, but around creation. Ethan didn't protest, but she could see the unease in his eyes. He tried to hide it with smiles and soft words, but Olivia knew. He was afraid she was slipping away, and he was right. The distance between them had become quiet but impossible to ignore. One evening, as Olivia closed the gallery after a long day, Ryan said something that stayed in her mind. "You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. The fact that you stood up after falling, that's your power." Driving home that night, Olivia looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror and smiled faintly. She was no longer broken. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger, steadier, freer. When she got home, Ethan asked if she wanted to watch a movie. She nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She realized something. She didn't hate him anymore. The anger had faded, replaced by calm acceptance. He had broken her once, but he couldn't control what she became after. That night, as she turned off the lights, Olivia looked at Ethan and whispered quietly, almost to herself, "You watched me break once. Now you'll watch me heal." And she meant it. Her storm was no longer wild. It was quiet, steady, and full of purpose. The kind of storm that doesn't destroy, but transforms. Months passed, and Olivia's life had changed completely. What began as a quiet escape through painting had become her strength. She wasn't the same woman who once cried in silence. She was independent now, confident, composed, and focused on her art career. Her paintings were being noticed in Seattle's creative scene, and people were beginning to recognize her name. But while Olivia was moving forward, Ethan was falling apart. He noticed how she no longer needed him. Her smiles weren't meant for him anymore. Her laughter wasn't shared with him. Even her silence, once soft and warm, now carried distance. It wasn't anger, it was freedom. She had stopped asking him where he was going, stopped worrying about his phone calls, and that made him restless. The woman who once waited for his attention now had a life that didn't revolve around him. The turning point came one quiet evening. Olivia was sitting by the fireplace reviewing sketches for her next exhibition. Ethan sat across from her, pretending to read, but his mind was elsewhere. The air between them felt heavy. Finally he spoke, his voice low and uncertain. "Olivia, are we okay?" She looked up from her sketchbook, her eyes calm but distant. "Why do you ask?" He hesitated. "You've changed. You don't talk to me the same way anymore. It feels like you're somewhere else." Olivia smiled faintly. "Maybe I am," she said softly. Ethan put down his book. "If I've done something wrong," she stopped him with a quiet look. "Ethan, we both know what you did." He froze. His throat went dry. For months he had wondered if she knew, and now he had his answer. Olivia didn't raise her voice or accuse him. She simply looked at him, calm but unbreakable. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting could ever be. Ethan leaned forward. "Olivia, please. I made a mistake. I don't know why I did it. I was stupid, lost. It meant nothing." She listened, not interrupting. His words spilled out, apologies, regrets, excuses. He said he missed her, that he wanted to start over, that he would do anything to fix what he broke. When he finished, Olivia took a deep breath and said, "Do you know what hurt the most, Ethan? It wasn't what you did with her. It was that you let me keep loving you while you were already gone." Her voice didn't tremble. It was steady, almost gentle. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. But Olivia didn't move closer. She didn't comfort him. The roles had reversed. Now he was the one breaking, and she was the one watching. She stood up and looked around the house, the pictures, the furniture, the memories. "This place doesn't feel like home anymore," she said quietly. "And it's not because of what you did. It's because of what I've become." Ethan stepped closer. "Don't say that, Liv. We can fix this. I can change. We can go to counseling, move somewhere new." Olivia shook her head. "You can't rebuild something that died quietly months ago. You watched me break, Ethan. Now I want you to watch me heal without you." Her words struck deeper than anger ever could. She picked up her sketchbook and walked upstairs, leaving Ethan standing there, realizing he had already lost her long before she said it. The next morning, she packed her essentials, clothes, art supplies, a few photos, and left. She moved into a small apartment near the gallery where she worked. It wasn't luxurious, but it was hers. Her walls were blank, waiting for her paintings. Waiting for her new beginning. At first, the silence of the new place felt strange, but slowly it became comforting. She filled her days with work, art, and purpose. She spent time with Ryan, whose kindness and steady presence made her feel understood. He never asked about her past, but his eyes always told her he knew. One evening, while they were setting up a new exhibition, Ryan said, "You have a calm strength, Olivia. It's rare. Most people break and stay broken. You turned it into art." She smiled, touched by his words. "I guess pain teaches you what peace really means," she said. Over the next few months, her art career soared. She had her first solo show, Reflections of Resilience. Every piece told a story of healing, self-worth, and quiet courage. The opening night was magical. The room was filled with lights, music, and people admiring her journey on canvas. Ethan came too. He stood quietly at the back of the gallery, watching her move through the crowd, glowing with confidence. She was smiling, a real smile, free from the shadows of the past. She looked different, radiant, like she belonged to a world he no longer understood. When their eyes met across the room, Olivia didn't look away. She gave him a small, polite smile, not out of bitterness, but closure. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had once been the center of her world, and now he was just a memory she had outgrown. After the event, he waited outside to talk to her. When she stepped out into the cool night air, he said softly, "You were incredible tonight." "Thank you," she replied, her tone kind but distant. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I'm proud of me too," she answered with a small smile. "It just took me a long time to realize I could be." There was nothing more to say. He wanted to ask if she still loved him, but he already knew the answer. Love wasn't the same anymore. She had forgiven him, but she had also outgrown the version of herself that depended on his love. Ethan watched her walk away with Ryan, their laughter echoing down the street. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was real, and that made it harder to watch. For the first time, he understood what it felt like to lose something that used to be his choice to keep. Olivia, on the other hand, didn't feel hate or regret. She felt peace, the kind that comes after finally letting go. That night, when she reached home, she took out her last unfinished painting, a mirror, half shattered, reflecting a woman smiling through the cracks. She completed it with one steady brushstroke, then signed her name at the bottom. As she stepped back to look at it, she whispered, "This is me now." It wasn't about revenge or winning anymore. It was about rediscovery. She had learned that strength didn't come from holding on, it came from walking away with grace. In the end, Ethan had watched her break. But now he was watching something far more powerful, her rebirth. Olivia Hart wasn't just surviving. She was becoming everything she was always meant to be, and this time on her own terms. A year had passed since Olivia left Ethan, and her life had transformed completely. The pain that once consumed her had turned into purpose. Her art had grown in meaning and depth, capturing the hearts of people across Seattle. Critics called her work honest, raw, and full of quiet strength. What began as her way to survive heartbreak had become her voice to the world. Her latest exhibition, titled From Broken to Brave, was her proudest achievement. Each painting told a part of her story, not in bitterness, but in truth. There were no tears, no darkness, only growth and light. The main piece of the collection was a large canvas showing a woman standing tall in a storm, her face calm as the sky cleared behind her. Olivia had painted it late one night after realizing she was finally free from her past. The night of the opening was special. The gallery buzzed with reporters, photographers, and guests. Olivia, dressed in a white dress that symbolized new beginnings, moved through the crowd with quiet confidence. Her laughter filled the space. Her eyes sparkled with peace. She wasn't the woman who had been betrayed. She was the woman who had rebuilt herself. Ryan stood beside her, helping coordinate the event. Over time, their bond had deepened, built on respect, patience, and shared understanding. He never pushed her to move faster than she was ready for. He simply stood by her, reminding her that strength didn't have to be loud. Sometimes it was as gentle as believing in yourself again. As Olivia greeted guests, she turned and saw a face she hadn't expected to see: Ethan. He stood quietly at the back of the room, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on her. For a brief moment, everything around her blurred. The laughter, the music, the flashes of cameras, all of it faded. Her heart didn't ache anymore. It simply remembered. Ethan hadn't come to cause a scene. He came to see for himself what she had become. He'd heard about her success from mutual friends, seen her face in the local magazine where she was featured under the headline, "The Artist Who Turned Pain into Power." He didn't know why he came, but deep down, he wanted to witness the woman he once broke, now unbreakable. Olivia didn't walk away or hide. She met his gaze and offered a polite smile, then turned back to her guests. Ethan stayed where he was, watching her greet people, pose for photos, and speak about her work with passion. Every word she spoke carried confidence, not anger. She had moved on, and that was the hardest truth for him to face. Later that night, as the crowd thinned, Ethan finally approached her. "You've done amazing things live," he said quietly. "I always knew you had it in you." She nodded, her tone kind but steady. "Thank you, Ethan. It took me a while to remember that." He looked down, struggling for words. "I read the article about you," he said. "They wrote that you found strength through pain. I'm sorry that I was the reason for that pain." Olivia took a deep breath. "Maybe you were," she said softly, "but I was the reason I survived it." For a moment there was silence between them, not awkward, but final. The chapter that had once defined her life was truly closing. Ethan smiled faintly, his eyes heavy with regret. "You deserve all of this," he said. "I do," she replied gently, "and I hope one day you find peace too." Then she turned and walked away, not out of anger, but out of grace. Ryan joined her, handing her a glass of sparkling water. "You okay?" he asked. Olivia smiled. "More than okay." As the night ended, Olivia stood by the gallery window, looking out at the city lights reflecting off the wet streets. It reminded her of the night everything had fallen apart. The rain, the silence, the heartbreak. But this time, the rain didn't feel sad. It felt clean, refreshing. Her phone buzzed with messages from people congratulating her. Among them was one from a journalist asking for an interview about her journey, how she turned betrayal into success. She smiled and replied, "It wasn't about revenge. It was about rediscovering myself." Days turned into weeks, and her story continued to inspire people. Women wrote to her saying her art gave them courage to leave broken relationships or start again after loss. Olivia read every message with gratitude. Her pain had once isolated her. Now it connected her to others. Ryan's presence in her life grew stronger. Their relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared dreams. He wasn't trying to replace her past. He was simply part of her future. He saw her not as a victim or a survivor, but as a woman with purpose. One evening, as they walked through the park, Ryan said, "You know what I admire most about you, Olivia? You didn't let what happened define you. You let it refine you." She laughed softly. Maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting, just growing beyond it. They stopped by the waterfront, watching the reflection of the city lights ripple across the water. It was peaceful, almost poetic. Olivia felt something warm bloom inside her, a feeling she hadn't known for years. It wasn't the rush of falling in love. It was the calm of finally being home within herself. Meanwhile, Ethan quietly disappeared from her life. He sold their old house and moved to another city, starting over in his own way. He carried regret but also respect for the woman Olivia had become. He didn't try to contact her again, because he knew that chapter was closed forever. Months later, Olivia's artwork was featured in a national magazine. The article was titled "She Made Him Watch Her Win." It wasn't about revenge or bitterness, it was about strength. It described her journey from heartbreak to healing, from silence to success. The story celebrated the power of rebuilding your life after being broken. As she read it, Olivia smiled. It wasn't pride she felt, it was peace. She had finally learned that forgiveness wasn't for the one who hurt you. It was for the one who needed to be free. That evening, she stood before a new blank canvas in her studio. The city outside was alive with lights, and her heart was full of calm energy. She dipped her brush in paint and whispered, "Here's to new beginnings." Her first stroke was bold, full of color, confidence, and hope. The same way she now lived her life. And somewhere, far away, Ethan might have seen her name in a magazine, or her face on a poster and remembered the woman he once broke. But what mattered most was what she had become, someone stronger. Wiser and free, Olivia Hart had not just survived her story. She had rewritten it, she had turned her pain into power, her heartbreak into art, her silence into strength. He had once watched her break, but now he and the whole world watched her win.